Happy to.
Okay. Today we are here with Jo McNally, and she's going to tell us about her experience as a music educator. You can go ahead.
Well, I graduated from university in 1975 and started teaching at the end of that year in a little town in Dakota, Illinois, which is like halfway between Rockford and God knows where. Very, very small town. And I was in 3 buildings. So I was teaching K through 12, but it was the primary school was in one building, year 5 and 6 was in another, and then I was in, and then the high school is where the main high school choir was, which was very, very small because there had been very little program. In fact, my desk was in the back of the math room with the choir stacks.
Wow.
I had no space of my own. In the lower school, I actually pushed a piano door to door. Had no space of my own.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, well, that was interesting. So I commandeered the space outside of the cafeteria and put up posters and stuff so that
You said, "This is my area."
To go to lunch, you know.
Yeah.
They were getting stuff whether they wanted it or not.
That's good.
So I was there for a year, and I ended up going back to Illinois, or well, I was still in Illinois, but I was teaching in Illinois because a position came up in my old grade school. So I actually taught my second year teaching alongside teachers who had taught me when I was from year
that is
4
so
to year
cool.
8. So, which was really bizarre, and walking into the building with one of my favorite teachers, Mr. Zeppi, who was the Spanish teacher and the librarian, and among other things, and just really opened your mind to lots of new stuff, and saying, "Hello, remember me?" And he said, "Yes. Why are you here?"
You're like, "I'm teaching music now."
To make a long story extremely short, but the deal is, I was there a year. There was a tax referendum, and it cut out the music department. It kept 2 full-time PE teachers and axed both of the music positions.
No.
Yes, I learned very early on the value not felt for music educators, kind of thing. So I was off for a little while, and then took over from a teacher in Coutts, Indiana, which is the home of Heinhold Hog. 10 miles of cornfields to get to school, which was a lovely place, and nice people, and it was fun. And I came in to teach for the band director, because I was one of the first people at my university to do the double degree of instrumental and vocal.
That's awesome.
12 kind of thing, which was a little bit funky at the time. I gather it's much more normal now than it was.
Yeah, the time when you were doing it, it was probably very
was
different.
70s-ish, late 70s, I guess. And so I was there for a year as well. I came in as the band director and stayed a second year as the choral general person, switch positions, because he came back. He had open heart surgery, so that's why they needed a person. And so I was there for 2 years, and I was still young and not attached to anyone, as they say.
Yeah.
And I had something came across my desk about teaching abroad, and I thought, well, if not now, when? So if I'm going to do it, I might as well do it now, because my parents are still relatively young. I'm relatively young. I'm not attached to anybody.
Yep.
Let's see what happens.
Why not? Yeah.
Which is, so I filled out all the forms and did all of the weird things you have to go through to do that. And
yes.
I was one of the final 3 candidates for 2 jobs. One of them would have been Hawaii.
Wow.
The other one was London.
Yes.
And the London one came through first, and I thought, well, let's go to a country where playing recorder wasn't the most weird thing you could do in your life. For a change.
Yes.
People would look totally down on you for playing recorder. So I came here, and I taught in an American school K through 12, and I taught mostly K through 12, virtually the whole almost 10 years that I did that. We're going through the music education part quickly because the other part I think is more
Yes.
interesting. It's all fairly normal, except that one of my classrooms, the school was in a mansion.
Wow.
I had a painted ceiling and a 12-foot mirror, and the gilded. It was quite.
I bet that was a nice classroom to teach in.
It was an interesting classroom to be in, and it had some really lovely moments, and I was there for a long time, so that was interesting. I joined something called London Symphony Chorus when I first got over here. That was one of the very first choirs that I sang with, and at the time Richard Hickox was the conductor.
Wow.
And lovely man, and really knew his stuff, as it were. It was just quite, and that kind of thing where you get to do all, because I went to Valparaiso University, so although we did one or two large pieces a year, it was a smaller school, so there were, and that brings a different repertoire, which is also fun and exciting. But it was also great fun to be working with an orchestra,
That's
2 or 3
amazing.
times a month.
Yeah.
So doing that for a couple of years and going through virtually all of the major repertoire in a couple.
That's such a great experience to have.
It was brilliant. I mean, we went to Russia at one point and sang with the conservatoire orchestra. And I won't tell you about my last time I was totally pissed out of my mind, which was 1982. And I never visited that sort of place again, but it was fun. As one does from foolish things. And we went to Paris to do one of the Mahler symphonies, and Jesse Norman was the soloist. And it was just, the opportunities were just magic. Doing some recording with Andre Previn. Unfortunately, the only one that I totally regret is Bernstein had come over to do something with the choir, but I was home that summer, so I didn't get to work.
Oh no!
Very bummed out about that.
You're like, come on.
There were other, you have a
Yes.
which is, I know, but it's all of that, and through that you kind of, as I went through teaching over here and in the international sector, I was still singing, and I was still singing semi-pro with a little group, and life happens and things change, and the school that I was at had a change of administration, and it was not fun, to say the least.
Yes.
And I knew that it was time to either, I'm a firm believer that the universe says, move on, or I'm going to make it really miserable for you until you do.
Yes.
And so I was in the middle of that one.
And you're like, okay.
But that was, that was as horrible as it was a blessing in disguise, because without that, I would not have gotten to do so many other things that I got to do when I was, being here. And I've been here now, well, since 1980, which is 40 some years. It's a long time. So I've lived here longer than I ever lived in the States, which is,
that's really cool.
Yeah, it's my parents used to love to come over here to visit. That was, so we always had family over to visit as well.
That's awesome.
Which was awesome. It was very awesome. My mother loved coming here for Christmas, even though there was never any snow, because it's not Dickens. You think it's going to be Dickens, but
you're like, trust me, no.
No, it isn't. And I live on my house is on a hill, and I mean it's a neighborhood, so the gradient of the hill is like this, and the gradient to my driveway is that. I went to concert a couple of years ago because I couldn't get off the hill.
Yeah, you're like, I can't.
There was 3 inches of snow.
Oh my gosh.
3 inches of snow to a girl from Chicago is kind of like, really?
Yeah, but still with it. Yeah.
You just can't. You can't really. I mean, it's just bizarre here. Anyway, so I don't generally go out when it snows here anyway, because I don't know how to drive in snow here.
It's probably more scary than to just stay home and.
It's it's the neighbors, it's the anybody else who's on the road that's
Yes.
and the rest of it, you kind of going, do I really need this job this day? Maybe not. So anyway, being safe is kind of a nice, but when it does snow here is quite beautiful, and my hill is lovely and overlook a forest, which just feels kind of funny. Anyway, so I digress a lot. But so things got not nice at the school that I was at, and I had the year before things came to a head. I'd seen an audition for a contemporary vocal ensemble that did newly commissioned works as theater, which was kind of up my alley. It scared me shitless, but it was, they did some really amazing sorts of things. And I got the audition piece, and I looked at it. It looked like a chicken had walked all over this page of music. It was just
crazy, yeah.
And the director called me, and because I didn't call back for a final thingy, and instead of telling her that I was just totally out of my mind and going, what the hell is this? I can't do that. That's just too hard. I just lied through my teeth and said my plans had changed and I couldn't do.
You're like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But the following year, things had gotten worse, as the universe makes them, and I took that piece of music out again, and I decided to look at it with new eyes and realize that, work backwards, working forwards, take it by piece.
Yep.
Don't panic, just breathe, and I did get into the ensemble, and I was.
That's amazing.
For almost 7 years, and we did. It was a really exciting and scary time, because a lot of the pieces that you were learning, you would everything had to be memorized, but you would only get 1 or 2 performances of them, and these were not short little pieces. These were extended pieces.
Yes.
Usually fairly involved in the choreography, involved as well, and there were some really wonderful moments to that. We did. I got to do some television and some recording at that point. And I always say that Judith Weir was my career, because I did several of the new commissions from her, and she is just the loveliest composer you would ever want to meet, and she's very, very amenable to the singers that have been assigned to whatever roles that you're playing. That if you have a query, or if you have something that doesn't work for you, she will always relook at it for you or explain.
That's
and
awesome.
She takes the time, which is brilliant. So having gotten into the group, I obviously left full-time teaching at that point, which I'd been in for 10 years or so, 10 or 12 years. And it was at a time that British schools were encouraging artists to go into schools to work with kids of all ages, being adults, kids, little kids. And the company I was working with did a lot of education work. Well, I kind of found a niche, because being the music education specialist.
Yes, you're like, this is perfect for me.
This kind of,
Yes.
right. And we did a lot of work and a lot of new commissions with a lot of kids, and that was really fascinating. But that led to other work with arts ensembles that did work in schools. I did a lot of work with the BBC Singers for a while, with their education departments. There seemed to be several. I think it must have been 4 or 5 years that I was with them a lot of the time, and doing some tour things with orchestras around the country. And they're fabulous, and they were always extremely generous, and it was a really, really interesting time to do that. And through that, and about that time, because I was starting to get quite a lot of workshopping for music education skills. The deal is that at that time, and still to some extent in this country, state schools, what we would call state schools here are private schools, but American state schools, which are your basic schools, didn't have music teachers who were specialist music teachers. They might have a teacher who was responsible for music, who may or may not have any experience or be a played recorder when they were 12. You know, so there was a real gap in the knowledge and what was going on at that time. So I did a lot of workshops with teachers and classroom teachers who were responsible for music, doing things that were not rocket science, but were foundationally sound. I tend to be I'm kind of an orph-Kodai person. I did quite a lot of the Kodai stuff speaks to me very much. I did some training at Indiana University before I came over here, and then some things beyond that. But I'm not slavish to either one of them. I don't know if either of those groups would want me on their team. But I just do what feels appropriate for me, which is all that anybody can do, because my classroom teaching experience, learning how to do it at university was, I think, kind of spotty for me. It just felt a bit more like Chinese menu planning than a real concept of this. The Kodai and the Orff thing sort of gives you it gives you a blueprint which you don't have to follow slavishly, but it says, but if you do this, you have a continuum that you're running on, and it gives you something to hold on to, and you can deviate from that if you're me. But it's that thing of working with the people who are in front of you and what works best for that people all the time, as opposed to something else. And it was about that time that there was something called the BFYC, which was the British Federation of Young Choirs, and they had what they called animators that were assigned to various parts of the country, or various school districts, or various boroughs, or various counties. It could be any number of things. And I had always thought that I would like to apply for that, and my circumstances were such that I just couldn't until one point where I could. And so I eventually did that, and I was accepted in the borough of Harrow, which is not too far from here. Not Harrow, the school, but Harrow, the borough, which is a slightly different thing. And I've been with them. This is the first year that I'm not with them.
Wow.
I was an animator for them for 2 or 3 years, and then they kept me on for special projects, and especially for what we called Songfest in the summer term, which was one of those 25 plus schools and 1,000 kids over 2 nights.
Wow.
All of that. And
I'm sure that was a really cool experience.
That was such fun, and I'm really sorry to have left it. This is the first year I haven't done it, but it stopped during the pandemic, obviously. So there were 2 years that it just didn't happen. And just before the pandemic, a couple of years before the pandemic, my husband developed cancer, which was inoperable, and he died just in the autumn just before the pandemic started.
Wow.
So I had given up. I did Songfest that season, and then I basically cut out all of my work because we were able to home hospice him, which was great.
Yeah, that's probably the best.
It was terrific. I can't tell you how much help I had, and how much, with the bed
Yes.
And it was fine. Most of it was fine. The last few weeks, obviously, but um, the deal is in the autumn, I had taken some time off. I was just about to go back to work again in after Christmas, and then the pandemic happened, and I was 66, 67 at the time, I think. So, and I had no real intention of retiring because I'm not really that kind. I'm not really oriented that way.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't doing as much as I was doing.
Yes.
I didn't have 8 choirs anymore or any of that jazz, but and we all go there. So, but that, and I just haven't recovered from that since, because there is just no. It's just the way life is at the moment.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I mean, and that's why I gave up. And I give it. And when they approached me about doing Songfest this year, I said, look, it's been 2-3 years kind of thing. I think it's time, because I did it for 20 years. And I thought,
Yeah.
well, this is a really clear-cut moment for somebody else to come in and make it their own. And
Yes.
you don't need to worry about what it's been, because nobody's going to remember what it's been.
Well, that's good. You have that perspective too, because I think that's really hard. Something that you've done for 20 years, that's been like your little thing, into your little baby, and then to, have that, perspective to let someone else take it, make it what they.
Yeah, and it's going to be fine. And the person that they've chosen to take over, I know very well. So
that's awesome. That works good then.
All good. It's all good.
Yes.
The FYC thing was interesting, because having come into Harrow, and it meant that I was also doing special projects for them around the country. And I don't know if you know the series VoiceWorks through Oxford University Press,
Mm-hmm.
but Peter Hunt, who is the editor of that, was also a BFYC animator at the same time that I was. So was David Carpenter and a few others. And he was approached by BFYC and OUP about writing VoiceWorks, and I was approached by BFYC and Music Sales to write Junior Choral Club. And originally I was asked to edit a series. Now, what I didn't understand at the time was the word edit in this context meant writing all the music and writing all the text and
wow.
And I'm not a composer.
So you're like, okay, I'll edit it, and then you're like, wait.
Because the music that they had wasn't going to work for what they wanted to do with the series. And I'll tell you that the first 12 songs for the first 3 books, I mean, there's some good stuff and there's some it all works, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's any good. And so it was a huge learning curve. I can remember standing at the post box for at least 10 minutes with the packet in my hand to be sent off to the first,
just like,
and kind of going, I can't do it. And the deal was for me is that when I was writing those, is that in most primary schools here, they had these books that were kind of these long, thin books that had sort of one line.
Yeah.
I think they probably have them everywhere. So they might be folk song books, they might be multicultural, they might be whatever. But they're basically just songs for singing. They aren't really songs that you actually meant for teaching concepts.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we were trying to do, or what I was trying to do, was to make sure that they were the bridge between doing the long books and octavos, so that there was something in between. Something in between
that could bridge that gap. That's amazing.
Yeah. That and the VoiceWorks books work the same way. And what we both did is that the choral parts were freely photocopiable, so the books were a little more expensive in the first instance.
But it's worth it.
But the material is photocopiable, which is great. I mean, VoiceWorks, the first and the second book, I still use a lot. There are other books, and I use some of the things from them, but those books I use a lot. And then OUP approached me about writing the key pre-stage one book, which is sort of reception, kindergarten up to year 2-ish. And the way that I wrote it is so that they were materials that you could sing in the first instance, play the games, do all of that,
Yes.
and then come back in the next several years and revisit in terms of sight singing, rhythm, and for all of the concepts
That's
and learning.
great. Yeah, to be able to reuse that throughout multiple years.
I think it's that mileage. I think a lot of teachers don't really. You do this. It's one thing that makes me so mad about octavos is that it's one song, you do it, and then you have to put it away for a couple of years because you can't do it again.
Yeah.
But why not do repertoire again the following year? Some of it. I mean, it's better.
Even if just for teaching purposes, to bring it back out and work on it some more. There's always new things to.
I have a community choir of about 100, which is adults, and we are not a choral society. They're an SAB choir mostly, although we can do some SATB, but it's numbers, and it's also why they're there and the choir that they are, not the choir that I would like them to be that's in my head.
Yes. They are who they are. Yep.
To deal with what's in front of you.
Yes.
You can lead them and you can hopefully train them so that they become the best that this group of people can be, but they are unlikely to be that group or several groups that are kind of
Yes.
around in my mind all the time that I would like to know them someday.
Yeah.
In real life.
Oh my gosh.
I think we all would. So it's that, and then I've had some commissions, and I never consider myself a composer ever, and it's just I'm a music teacher. Occasionally is a good idea.
But that's amazing. That's such a cool background and experiences that you've had.
I'm famous for about 5 minutes every lunchtime because there'll be somebody in the UK who does my warm-up.
So you're like, we know you.
and I just feel it. I can feel it.
Yep. Well, I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk today and share your experiences and all of that. And it's been just a pleasure talking to you today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. So I hope you have a good rest of your day. Good luck with all your things.
Thanks.
Thank you.